Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to show the games I have, the arcade port games I have on the TI-99 4A. Found this system way back at a Goodwill. It's close to 10 years now. If not 10 years, it's real close. And, you don't just find deals like this anymore at a Goodwill. This thing was $10 and it had 5 or 6 games. I bought a few cents because I really like the arcade ports on here for the time that this was out. I mean, some of these games are, early to mid 80s, so it did a real good job. Now, one thing that the TI-99 4A probably has is a bit of slowness to the games, I guess, but that's not always bad. Like on this one, I don't know if it's just a little slower because of the system or it's just the design they did, but it's a good pace for me because I'm not really good at burger time, but I can play for a good while on this, so it's really fun for me. And the graphics are great. This probably came out around the same time as the ColecoVision. So when you compare it to that, it looks really good. I mean, not that the Coleco's that bad, but the other thing is, I think because of the screen being instead of vertical, it's horizontal now than the arcade, they've limited the amount of layers on your burger in this. Not that they were ever going to match the, 9 layers or whatever the arcade does on some screens. You get, I think, probably about 5 layers max on this, so it'll go back and forth from maybe 3 to 4 to 5, which is good variety. And again, the pace is perfect for me, and the layout's fun. And considering the controllers are a little awkward, if anyone's ever played on a TI-99 with the Y-split controllers, I'll show a picture of them somewhere. They're not the best controllers, so this game handles pretty good with it. So there you go. Oh, and I mean, also, they got, I believe, most of the characters, if not all of them. I think you get the hot dogs, the pickles, the onion. Is there an onion? I can't remember. But there's an egg, and the egg chases you. So, they're all there. If it's missing anything, I don't know the game so well that I know that it's missing anything. So this gets pretty high marks for me for an arcade port way back in the early 80s. So there you go. There's burger time. On to the next. All right, next we've got Miss Pac-Man, and again, this is going to be one of the things you discover with the Pac-Man games on here. They're a little bit slow. Now, the rest of these are all Atari Soft games, and they're not all Atari. I mean, this is Namco stuff, but Atari Soft was big, and Atari was big in the early 80s still. So they were getting a lot of the licensing. So you can see right here that it starts off pretty slow. And it handles good. I mean, the controllers are a bit stiff, so I'd rather have a better controller. Now, you can get an adapter. I haven't spent it. It's like $30. You can get an adapter that plugs into the side that lets you use Atari 2600 joysticks, which would be nice, especially using the newer ones that came with the special editions that have come out over the last few years. Those joysticks are much easier. They're very, I don't know what, they almost feel loose. Instead of stiff, so it controls really well. So those would be really nice. So I haven't gotten to the point where I want to buy that adapter yet, but I'll probably wait and then really want it when it's not available anymore after I break these joysticks. But it's a great version of Miss Pac-Man. The missing thing is the intermissions. There's no intermissions, but you get all the boards. Every one of them is presented here, so it's just fantastic. And it does speed up a little bit as you get into the higher boards, so it increases the challenge. But again, kind of slow on the system when you start out in the early ones, almost too slow. So you can always select like a higher level to start with just for fun to get things zipping along if you want to. Or you can just start off really slow and just rack up those points and work on getting to higher and higher levels and go for high scores, which is pretty cool too. So again, if you want to talk about just how it looks fantastic. I mean, they did a perfect job and everything's presented except for the intermissions. So, and you get used to them. You can, if you've seen them all, you kind of imagine them in your head when you get through certain stages anyway. So it's the only thing missing. And, this was, I mean, when I consider what the Atari 2600 did back in that time, I thought it was a really good conversion. But of course, computers had still had an edge on on systems like that. But this one looks fantastic. It's great. If my mother would have been able to play this back in the day, this would have felt just like the arcade to her. It might have been a little easier, so she could have enjoyed it even more, because Miss Pac-Man is pretty much the only arcade game I've ever seen her play in my life, and she really liked it back then. So she would have been thrilled with this. But there you go. There's Miss Pac-Man on the there's Miss Pac-Man on the TI-99 4A with Atari Soft as their publisher. Okay, so you might as well just jump into Pac-Man. I should have done Pac-Man first because it's more boring, but you can see right away how tediously slow Pac-Man is. So I'm going to get right out of this, and I'm going to jump right to the 9th level. You usually get the selection of 1 through 9, and even getting onto the 9th level, it doesn't quite get you to the key stages yet. So it gets you into the Galaxian. I don't know what those... There must be a name for the ships in there. So you get Galaxian ships, and you get to get through a couple of those, and then there's the bells, and you can see already that the pacing is much better. It's kind of like the early stages, but it's very fluid. And again, you know, if back in the day, if you had this just based off of pure looks, this is incredible for the time. So people would have been very happy to have this. I could see why. I wonder what the cost of these were back then. They're probably like $30, which, you know, in today's money is, you know, at least double that. So they were a little expensive, and you know, it's just well done. And again, the only thing missing really is the intermissions. All right, real quick, just checking out Centipede. There's only so much you can see with Centipede, like all these games. You know, they're just done over and over and over. But what I must say is this one has really good pacing to it. It feels fast and snappy right away. You know, you can see the characters are moving pretty quick already. And the joystick on this actually feels really good, because whoever programmed the pacing of your shooter, they did a real good job. It just feels like the right amount of movement when you move. You know, you've got enough to get away or to catch up to them. And it's just, I don't know. Someone really nailed the joystick version of Centipede, you know, without having a trackball. I don't know. I'd have to look that up to see if there was ever a trackball for this system. I imagine there was. They put trackballs back then on everything. It was just if you wanted to buy it. So I could be wrong. I'll put a note in there and see if I find it or not. But again, this plays super smooth, and I mean, as far as an arcade port, this would have been incredible at the time. I don't know what else to say. It kind of floors me, because a lot of the other games are slow. So is it programming that made those other games slow? Or, you know, is it just they made other games slow? Because this one's pretty zippy. There you go. There's Centipede. This is one I highly recommend. All right, so let's jump into Dig Dug. Again, what harms this is you're almost probably limited to sprite sizes on these or something. So once you've established your sprite size, I think then everything else flows around that. And you can see this is pretty crammed. It's almost like half of the screen. You're getting the top half of the screen in Dig Dug when you're playing this. If that makes sense. If anyone's seen the arcade game, it's in portrait mode, so this feels like you're missing half of the screen. But it plays pretty smooth. There's one thing I don't like, and that's when those guys are going through the rock, and they're in that mode right there where they're just like the eyeballs. You can't shoot them when they're the eyeballs. Like, they won't come out and you shoot them and they're just the eyeballs, and then they turn into the monster and start pumping up. See, and again, on the exiting, you don't get a chance to get them when they're exiting, because they go right up to the top and they don't reappear. and you can't shoot them in the ghostly format. I don't know if that's what you call it, but when they're just going through the earth and they're floating and you just see the eyes. Which also means that when they're coming out, you got to stand back a little bit because you got to wait till they transform into their full shape before you can shoot them. So you can see right, there, it's not, you got to wait till they come out. Simple as that. Other than that, pretty decent. I think there might have been better conversions of this at the time. But again, dealing with the limitations, those guys can outrun you too much. So I don't like that, even on the lower levels. But once again, when you consider having close to arcade style games at the time, they were doing a great job on here. So Dig Dug, again, one of the games I really like from the old days. I like it more and more as I've aged. I enjoyed it in the arcade. I'd always play it, but it wasn't my favorite. But as time's gone on, I really can appreciate Dig Dug. It's a very clever game. Lots of strategy, lots of different ways to get monsters. Just pretty exciting. Gets really difficult in the high levels. So there you go. There's Dig Dug. All right, what do we got left? Pole position. Pole position, it's really hard for me to like any games that you got to steer with a joystick. It just doesn't work well. So take that for what it's worth. So on this, I would have preferred a different layout for the controls. Pushing forward is gas, back is brake, left and right is steer, and then the button is for going into high-low gear. Now, if you'd ask me, high-low gear they could have done up and down, or just one way, up and up, and then use the button for the gas, because it's really hard to steer through corners while trying to give it gas too by pushing the joystick up and to the left or right and getting that finesse where you're pushing left or right and you got to lay off the gas a little bit. I think they should have put the gas on the button and then just did the shift by pushing up. So high or low gear, you push up, and then you could pull back for brake. Most of the time, people don't use the brakes that much anyway. If they would have left brakes out totally and they wanted to just shift up and down into low gear to go around corners, that would have been fine by me. But again, usually you're not braking that much. You're just feathering on the gas on what you want to do. So the button would have been a lot better. I don't think there's an option in here to change that, and that's what kind of ruins this for me. I thought it was neat that they've got the qualifying round before, like the arcade. I don't think all versions do that. They go right into the race, some of them. So it's nice to have the qualifier, and then you get your position on, that's the whole point of pole position, is you want to qualify with the best, so you get the pole position when you're in the race. And some games back then, probably the Atari 2600 and I don't know if the 5200. 5200 probably was fine, but they didn't give you the qualifying round before you started the race. So pole position, maybe there's a steering wheel for this. I'll look that up too. I'll leave a little note, just a yay or nay if there was one. So pole position could have done without. It came with the system, so it wasn't one I bought. So I'm happy to have it. All right, and finally we have Donkey Kong. Now, I've covered this already, so I'm just going to show a little bit of the gameplay on this. But this was really well done. Again, one thing that's missing is like little cutscenes and stuff. Donkey Kong doesn't fall. On this stage, there's no fireball. The oil tank explodes, but there's no fireball that comes out. I don't know why. I could have used a few less barrels coming at me and a fireball coming out. But then again, the fireball really doesn't hassle you much in this game because he's on the bottom, and usually you move your way up pretty quick unless you're hanging out at the bottom to use that hammer. So it doesn't hurt my feelings to not have the fireball, and they throw plenty of barrels at you, so it's pretty good. And it handles pretty well once you get used to it. Now, The second stage is always a little tough for me. These fireballs are way too aggressive for some reason. See how fast they're going up and down those ladders? So this is always a hard stage. So the difficulty is bumped up a bit, and you don't get, at the end, you don't get Donkey Kong falling. So that's kind of a bummer. You do get the elevator stage, which is nice, but no bouncing girders, which makes it way too easy. I mean, there's no challenge in getting through this. The fireballs, again, are a little aggressive, and they can really get in your way. That's probably where they put some. But once you're past that fireball on the right, there's nothing stopping you. So I don't know. You know, even if they just would have, it feels like they could have snuck some girders in there just randomly. That's a big loss for me because it makes this stage way too easy. They do have the cement factory, or the pie screen, we used to call it. So this is great. You know, they've got all the stages. And again, what you're missing is just, I mean, this one, they don't have pies up top, but they got pies on the bottom. Oh no, they do have pies on top. What am I saying? This stage has everything. So I don't know why they couldn't do it on some of the others. But as far as the only thing that bums me out of this whole game, I don't even care that Donkey Kong doesn't fall or something like that. And then there's no like music in the background most of the time. But the real killer is just not throwing like a girder out there or something. So there you have it. That's all the arcade games I've got for the TI-99 4A at the moment. Maybe there's a few others I'd like to get someday, but you know, this is a good collection. And I got some regular Texas Instrument games that are knockoffs like TI Invaders and Parsec, so that rounds it out really good. But I thought I'd just show you guys how really good quality the arcade ports were on this system. Maybe they're a little slow, which makes them a little easy, but you know, that's kind of nice sometimes, where you know, you can get to the higher levels and just have fun and play the games longer because they're not just brutally difficult right at the start. And if you always want to, you can skip levels in most of these and go up to higher levels. So that's cool. But there you go. So thanks for checking this out, and hope you found it a little interesting. It was a great find. I'm really glad I got this system because I never had it back in the day. The computer we had was a TRS-80, and it did not have this quality of arcade ports on it. So this was really cool to get all these years later and be able to experience. Well, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. So long.